everyone who puts relations first, who focuses on being proud of what they've done, not arrogant, but just confident in it. People invest in people, they invest in confidence, and in the world of founders and mental health, they invest in the people they believe will be honest about where they are, as opposed to hide it. And that's a commonality I've seen across meeting tens of thousands of people and consolidating the best so far, 2,100 in the network that I've built. Because everything I found was that when we can see people lying to themselves, we're pretty sure they're going to be lying to us by default, whether they intend to or not.
Welcome to Startups Decoded, where we uncover what it really takes to build and scale startups. I'm Andy Walsh, founder and strategist. Each week we will bring you actionable insights and real stories. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to Startups Decoded. Today we're looking at orchestrating connections, and by that I mean how do you think about telling your story, building community, and then using that as a vehicle to be able to grow. Today I'm really happy to have David Homan. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Andy. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to today because when we first met, just some of the examples that you gave as far as where you came from and the people that you know and how you've created that. For me, it was a masterclass in thinking about the active process that you need to do to build trusted relationships. And it's something that I have needed to work on myself. I wasn't a natural networker to be able to meet people who are perfect strangers in a room. Everyone assumes that I'm that guy, but I never have been. I've had to work on it. To give people some context, let's go back to where it started for you in thinking about your transition from musician to connector, or if there was a linear journey. I'd love to hear your story about how that got started.
Yeah, happy to. And the thing I'd say, right, every one of us is always working at how we build relationships. Every decade of my life, something has changed drastically that's made me rethink my narrative, who's around me, even who makes the cut for my, 25th, 35th, 40, now 45th birthday parties. And it's amazing to see how few people stay in any longevity with you unless you have a purpose and a shared intent with them. So that might sound eloquent now. I knew none of that when I was 12. I got really sick. I was a pianist, not a composer at that point, and I quit piano. The illness stopped baseball as a career for me and got me only back into software because it was something I was more naturally inclined for. But that year, which was the start of my sixth grade, I became asocial. I went from that kid everyone thought could be a leader to the kid that was heavy set on a good day, shy, and nowhere near the person that other people used to see me as or the way they see me now. And every moment since then has been this journey to figure out where I fit in until I realized I had to build my own community of people who didn't feel that they fit in. And that whole time, because I've never stopped my music career, I've been improvising, composing music, ballets, modern dances, some orchestral, a lot of chamber. My daughter will always joke, my older kid, Eva, you can just say in Alexa, play the music of David Homan, and it's that easy. Yet we don't connect around most of what we are passionate about unless we're intentional and vocal about it. And I've had to learn that in a very serious, studied way of how to be authentic, but also be proud of everything that I've done.
So do you find, and I'm doing this a lot lately myself, is the active reflection about different periods in your life, because as you get older, you learn new skills, you have maturity around experience and failures, wins, things that happen along the way. Do you look back at those moments and try and compartmentalize it and think about, okay, within that time in my life, what did I learn? How can I apply it now? And is there some kind of cathartic or almost cleansing process that happens by looking back?
I don't know if I'd say it's cathartic to look back. I think, I've had these two things driving me my entire life. I wanted to live a life without regret. Obviously, I have things I wish I did differently, but if I lived a life of regret, I wouldn't love where I am now. And I really want to love the journey as hard as it is. I'm divorced 3 years, just moved apartments, have a startup launching out of beta I'm raising for, have a book coming out, juggling between 5 to 8 clients. My kids are starting middle school and third grade, and I don't sleep well at night. I go to bed just fine. I just wake. anxious early with unsettled thoughts of how to figure this out. And I could compartmentalize and look back at everything I've learned. I'd rather focus on what I've learned that's going to give me the resilience to get through everything that is in reality, Andy, my choice to be in these situations. There's no one but me that put myself there. Yes, there's things that could have happened differently in my life in many different ways, but I want to love the journey and where I'm going. And for that, I have to always keep perspective on not just what I learned or what I could do differently, but how I can continue to make what I believe are the best choices of the time, even if they might cause me hardship later.
And the resilience that comes through heartache or hard times and the low points that you have in your life. If you're pragmatic human, it allows you to be able to look at those times and you navigated it. It can give you confidence that anything that comes your way in the future, you have the ability to be able to think about, okay, what's happened? How do I solve for this? And then how do I move forward? And I find it fascinating. You talk about there as in elementary school, going from leadership to then being asocial and then coming back out of it to do what you do now. Talk to me about the point where you realize that connecting with people and then being able to turn that into a business was something that became real rather than just part of networking, which everyone does. Like for you, was there a moment when you realized that this can actually be something that turns into a career?
Absolutely. It took me 5 years of it staring at me in the face to realize it. So, everyone, right? Every founder in particular, everyone needing to raise capital, find the right deal, they think about having that need and then building the relationships to solve that need. And I realized that wasn't the right mentality for how I needed to live my life. I needed to build the relationships without the need, to trust my instincts on who was around me. And then when I had a need, that need became fulfilled. And that was that aha moment for me. I had spent 2 years after the housing bubble recession and the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, just learning how to network differently. Every event I went to, every person I talked to, I found what's now called the connector or the super connector, and I befriended them. And what I didn't realize is that by connecting them to each other, I could build a global community spanning 35 countries and 187 cities to date. I didn't realize that what I talked about would speak true to them, most of whom are the upper echelon of the connected people you want to meet on this planet. It's why my book coming out, Orchestrating Connection, has this focus on a playbook of how to do this because I've lived that. And I lived it in an asinine way of doing it without realizing it, helping people without an expectation of return, and then suddenly being seen in a way that everyone else saw me but myself. And when I turned that around was when I realized the same way that I find resonance when I write music that people listen to was the same exact process to find resonance between and amongst people and orchestrate those connections. And only when I took that music world of mine, the executive world, the connection world in between, and I realized I was one person doing this, not three different hats, that's when I consolidated everything into what is now called orchestrated connecting.
And I see the relationship there, and I have a background in music as well. I had an audio branding business that I started here and sold. And in that process, you start to learn a lot about human beings and psychology and things that are part of our DNA that go right back to the early days of storytelling that then turned into songs. So that was a way to record history. It was a way to maintain the strength of culture through generations when there were no other means to be able to record that history. So the ability for you to create and connect with people in different ways, because I flip it the other way and go, well, anyone that listens to a piece of music hears something different. And I don't mean literally, but their interpretation of what it does to them. And it could be a chord progression, it could be a lyric, it could be a beat that just makes them move. There's things everyone interprets in a different way. And if you apply that to a human relationship, everyone that meets David is not going to see you through the same light. So you need to have this ability to be agile and think about your relationship with each person in context of who they are and how you know each other.
It's completely true. I know from your background and the success you've had from that into where you are today that you are a study of human beings. Everything in now this incredible podcast you've launched is just a study into what makes people tick and be able to interact and succeed. because we're all looking for that magic solution. And the thing is, it doesn't exist. I've met some of the most prominent billionaires, celebrities, leaders on this planet, and they are striving for what they want, not resting on their laurels. And I've met some of the most arrogant, horrible people who will convince you they are greater than everyone else. And by virtue of having to create that sense that they are greater, we know they know they're not. And then I meet, and these are the people I care about. And I believe there's more of us than we think there are who are naturally curious, intimate, and vulnerable, to view that journey of loving that journey of who's around and with them, not just what they get from it. But it seems like those people are an anomaly in this day and age. You know, the second part of the book, my co-author Noah Askin and I wrote, is how to build purposeful community in a tribal world. We feel we've fallen back on those tribes to stick with the people who look like us, who talk like us, who want the same things. And the thing that I just fail to understand is if you're around everyone who wants the same thing as you, then how can you all get it? And if you're around a world of diversity, around a world of people who approach the world with empathy and compassion and can be successful, why wouldn't you want more than that and more of that? And we live in a space now where everyone wants to take up more space because they think they deserve it. When I go back to that living a life without regret, I've never thought I've deserved anything. I've wanted to earn it because I wasn't born with a network. I wasn't born into privilege, but I built it authentically. That's why I wrote a book about it. And it's why after 6 years, I found investors and people to build a startup called SOAR, Strength of Authentic Relationships. It's called SOAR Connect for trademark reasons. And the goal was, how can we systematize authentic connection? How can we visualize it? How can we create an accountability? And how can we filter out the people that want to take from us so that they don't take from others that we love and respect?
So elegant. And I love the notion of tribe. And my background is in creative and culture strategy, which is all thinking about, from a storytelling lens, what are the things that unite people? And there's foundational things around trust, or it could be just sharing food. It could be where you live. And there's things that connect you. But a tribe, by definition, is where it's aligned on passions. You have this unified thing that you're all passionate about, that you want to do, yet how you come together is always unique. And I think understanding the human part of a tribe is something that I've always been fascinated by. And you're right, I'm a curious person and I love the study of how humans think. And on here, we tackle practical things around how do you apply someone else's experience to something that can be easily digested and used ongoing by other founders who we talk to. But I think the other part of it is also the human side. What are the feelings that you had through each of these phases, and how did you overcome it? Something that I'm really curious on that you touched on before. Someone who is really well known, a successful entrepreneur, they're a household name in the venture world. That person versus a first-time founder who goes to their first networking event and is trying to just work out the world. Are there commonalities between people you would assume are amazing versus someone who is learning it for the first time?
Here's the common thread I see for everyone who is not successful and becomes it, and everyone who is successful and actually does deserve it or earned it. They don't let other people's opinion of them or people's belief or investment in them define who they are or their value or their purpose. And when we live in this world of the perils of social media, and we look at how many likes we have, how many follows, all of that, right? I'm proud of your podcast because the content is killer and key. It's also then relevant that this is a rising top podcast in the market, but you listen to how many people do it who had success or fame and didn't get the following because they asked the questions they wanted to hear, not the questions that the audience wanted to need. And in that, every early founder I've met, and my network includes tons of them, along with insanely successful name brand VCs and family offices and the rest, everyone who puts relations first, who focuses on being proud of what they've done, not arrogant, but just confident in it. People invest in people, they invest in confidence. And in the world of founders and mental health, they invest in the people they believe will be honest about where they are, as opposed to hide it. And that's a commonality I've seen across meeting tens of thousands of people and consolidating the best so far, 2,100 into the network that I've built. Because everything I found was that when we can see people lying to themselves, we're pretty sure they're going to be lying to us by default, whether
Yeah.
they intend to or not.
Yeah, and you called it out before, the people that have a false sense of who they are versus someone who is vulnerable and genuine. And for a lot of people, they get nervous about being who they are, and they undervalue, I guess, the what they bring to the table, the strength, their experience. So sometimes they feel like they almost have to create a narrative to be able to feel like that's the person that someone else wants them to be, rather than backing themselves. Did you go through that? Do you see that in other people as far as trying to overcome that hurdle to go from, I know myself, I'm not egotistical, but I can confidently articulate my story and build deep connection?
So I believe, Andy, we live in two competing narratives of our lives. It's what we think our narrative is the one that we share. What we believe the actual narrative to be is the one we never want to talk about. And the authenticity that comes with actually understanding it's a combination of those two gives you that mindfulness and that approach. And this takes a lot of self-work. So here's one version, right? I'm that shy, fat kid who never grew up, was afraid to take risks. I took risks because I felt I had to. I got out of college. I went to grad school because it was the only way to get to New York, and I thought I could live there. I had a panic attack. I moved back home. I nearly never came back. Then, because of my abilities as an executive in nonprofits, I got a job. That job turned into a nightmare 3 years later when the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme happened, and my 15 minutes of fame was entirely people asking me what I did wrong, which was a choice made by the foundation when I was 13, when I was not involved in the foundation. And then I was in a job, and then I got another dream job working with the family office to run a film company, and COVID hit and Hollywood died. And then I left that and tried to build a business. And as I built a business, needing the capital and the time, my marriage fell apart, and here I am. And that is the story in my head every moment of every day. And I cannot escape that feeling that everything I've done will become a failure, is a failure, even when there's constant validation. And then I think, when I talked about what we earn in life, what's that other version? I was a kid who got over near death when I was 12. I didn't fit into every community, but I became, an athlete again and played soccer through high school, then not competitively, but very actively in college. I started writing music. My music's been at Carnegie Hall and touring the world. By 26, that job I got was a job most people didn't get till their 40s. And I led that foundation out of a lawsuit and out of total losses to stability. That got me through a board I joined because of something passionate to me, to work with Ray Dalio's family and to build a film company and to support, his son and his daughter-in-law with some of their incredible work. And then I used that skill set to build a business that for the last 5 years has been thriving, with a deep consultancy that then grew my network from 40 to 400 to 2,200 and counting. And in that, I raised for a startup in 2.5 months last year, in one of the hardest times for early stage founders to raise. And over $500,000 came in from a network that I built. As I built that product out, and as my book is starting to come out, I've nearly raised 2/3 of my next round. With some of the biggest family offices and capital firms on the planet going, I can see more uses for SOAR than any other startup since LinkedIn and HubSpot and Apple, if they all had triplets together. And the potential of all of that is sitting right there. And I still feel every part of that other narrative with me. None of this leaves you. And I've met so many incredible people who sit with that and doubt themselves. It's what you do from that that matters. It's how you are authentic in that story and those lessons learned, right? Every 5 years, every decade. It's about understanding that if you're not going to stop yourself, then you need to build up a community around you who's going to help you become unstoppable with them.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. The question that I have, do you think that you were always resilient, or is it something that you've had to try really hard to build to be able to keep facing forward and through the twists and turns that you just described? Because resilience is such a key skill for a founder to have, and you're going to fail, which I have real issues with that word. Things don't go your way, but I think the resilience is critical, and being able to find a path forward. Some people are just naturally can take stress on and be resilient, and others have to work really hard. Looking back and even today, like how would you describe your native instinct around resilience and how it comes up as part of your job?
In pre-K, there was a bully named Davy, which is why you can call me Dave, you can call me David. You cannot call me Davy if you want to stay my friend. And this kid, he picked on other kids. And at 4 years old, Andy, I hate bullying. My triggers in life are hypocrisy and injustice. I don't think we can ever be perfect, but I think we should try to live in a more just world where we're not hypocrites. And this little kid, and he was a little kid, he would smack down all the girls and all the boys that were smaller than him until, as the story goes, my mom got a call one day and it was from the teacher and the woman who became a close family friend who cleaned the entire school and essentially watched after me. And they called me in. They told my mom that I had stopped the bully, that he had a bloody nose, therefore they had to send me home. But they weren't punishing me. They were sending me home on the way to, and this will date how old I am. This can't be yogurt, which was before 16 handles and Pinkberry and everything else. That was the only one. And I stood up to somebody doing something to somebody else. And nothing has stopped me since that moment that has I've faced in my life. That wasn't a moment where I want to use everything I have resilience for to stop the hypocrisy, the injustices, and the imbalances of power that make a whole bunch of arrogant, powerful, selfish people maintain their power when the world has needs that could be easily met. And that is from sustainability and climate change to poverty to human trafficking. I don't understand why, if people in this world have such power, they turn a blind eye to it, except for the one thing I know is true, which is nothing right now will damage their reputation by their apathy. And I've dedicated my life to build a global network. Coming out tech, every part of it is the same goal. What if we could get more people to be purposeful and hold themselves and others accountable? What would happen if we actually showed the consequences of no longer being in a community because of the bad actions that we took? And all that goes back to me as David or Dave facing off against this 4-year-old kid who was gigantic in our eyes. And I went behind him on my hands and knees, and he fell back over me because he was just running around trying to torture people. And he hurt himself slightly. He was fine. I'm not trying to say I was perfect in this situation, as I don't advocate violence, but that shocked him into realizing he wasn't impenetrable. And he soon went from being the bully to being a friend of everyone. I don't know what possessed me to do it then. This was 42 years ago. But ever since then, I have rallied against this idea that we should sit by when others need help, to the point where I promise too much help, but I do my best to be honest about doing everything I can to help people.
How do you balance thinking about your morals and what you just described with networking, where you're going to be meeting and integrating with people that don't share the same philosophy as you or same outlook and prioritization of those things? Do you have to separate them sometime? Are you able to carry that through in all conversations and separate your clientele? Because we all face challenges of dealing with people that we have to, who have completely opposing views to us, but there's a necessity to work with them, and sometimes there's not an alternative. But how do you think about the difference between staying true to yourself versus growing a business and networking with so many different types of people?
I have an advantage other founders don't have, which is that I spent 10 years building a purposeful network with an ironclad rule. And I spent the prior 5 years setting up the seeds and planting the trees for it. So the advice I give could not be the same for somebody just starting out as where I am now. But I'll tell you this, a decade ago when I launched my network, I said I only want to be around action-oriented, natural givers, that I or somebody else would leave my kid. Now I have two, so kids with you. And that was unassailable. Everyone thought it was limiting. 67 Giving Pledge billionaires I have access to later, acres of celebrities in Hollywood and the West End and Broadway and Bollywood, all through not just those people, but more so the people who were the gatekeepers and the most trustworthy. And by limiting something, I've freed something in people to either be that high integrity person you want to do business with or not. And by building a global network that way, that's why I hope I'm poised for the success that I've been working towards. But honestly, I'll be upset if it doesn't happen. But I've been able to help over 10,000 people fulfill part of what they need to have purpose on this planet, which is mostly to help other people, that's the right measurement of it. But it's a really challenging thing, right? That question's hard because if we could just work with the people we love, we would, but we have to because we need money, we need access, and we need that power. So all I'd ask is trace them what happens to all those founders who end up without the shares they needed for their blood, sweat, and tears. Look what happens to those founders who took investors that prioritized their investment above everyone else who came in earlier. Look at what happens with the private equity of the groups that buy it at a margin because investors waited too long. And then we end up in these situations where all these very arrogant VCs, not all of them, but many, think they're the God's gift on this planet. And what are their percentages of success, right? If the venture world was so smart, then why did 9% of startups still fail? When we have gotten better to fund the right ones by this point? This is a world where everyone will posture to say they are the best at something, and no one will say that they're doing their best, because you can't do that. And therefore, we fall prey to that endless world of let's hope the next person will save us. I didn't prescribe to that starting 10 years ago. I said, I do not care. If this person is an incredibly prominent person and they're a schmuck, they don't get to come to my events. I will not put them in my world. And then you know what happens? Somebody goes, hey, I got this call I want you to take. It's with somebody I really trust. I don't make this intro for anyone else, but I'm going to do it for you because you have a moral compass with who you'll connect with. And then I could name people on this planet by naming a single name, their first name. People would know them, but it's not about the name dropping of it. My publicist from my book probably wishes I would name drop all the people that I've met who trust me. But why would you trust me if I go around being like, I met Andy Walsh. Do you know Andy Walsh? I know Andy Walsh. Do you want access to him? Those people will get fat, they might get rich quick. They won't live purposely. I've taken the long game, and I encourage other people to take even the middle version of it. Do the self work, be accountable, and ask the most of the people who are the closest to you, because they will, as all the science shows, define your life, and learn to love that journey with them, whatever happens from it.
I love that there's lessons there for me in thinking about how I communicate, and not to make this episode about myself, but I find that I'm fortunate to be in the front row seat and just absorb so much insight from people. And what I heard there was your ability to earn trust with a lot of people and build that over a period of time, because you can't just activate a network overnight. It takes time and energy. And in a world where it's easy to connect, you're not really connected. It's superficial, and it's not like you can call those people and say, hey, I've got this opportunity, or I need some help. I've been able to have something that you stand for and that you're known for, and then earn trust over a period of time. And that grows. And I'm seeing that myself. And I'm like you, I'm humble. I don't talk about the things that I've done in a way that's out of context, or the people that I know. If it's important for part of a conversation, then of course I'll talk about that, because, I see it as a brand versus product statement. Your brand of David Homan is very much around trust and morals, where your product for the people that you know, what are the things that you can help them with, and what insights do you bring, so the connections that you're making are not just a handover to this person that could help. There's context and there's outcome that come with it too. So it's not just the relationships, it's the experience, to make sure that you're almost giving them an alley-oop to continue what they need to do.
My 8-year-old thinks when I give him an alley-oop, he can dunk, even though he's 4 feet tall. Right. And I think of that as this analogy of like, we all think that we could be that giant who can just slam dunk. And the chances are there's 2% of us that even get to that height that could do it. But my kid Max dreams, Andy. He dreams of that because he thinks if I just get it to him with the right angle, that time will the time his kicks and his leaping ability, which is about as good as mine, gets him there. When I know the reason you were my favorite person when we met at that conference several years ago was because we had a real conversation. Everything else was platitudes and posturing, and probably those people were the people that I should have networked to meet. But I've learned, and then what? Somebody who walks in name dropping something, somebody who's instantly telling you about their deal. Like I've in the book, like we've categorized all these different type of takers. I thought there were 14 when I started to publish this book. I already have two more. And now we've also archetyped the connectors, right? The conveners and the silent givers and the thoughtful and all the rest. But it's this idea that like we see people coming that way. Why don't other people see themselves coming that way? That's because we all think we can just do that slam dunk, even though we're 4 feet tall.
It's such a nice analogy, and I have an 11-year-old daughter, as you know, and it's the same kind of thing. I find that I learn a lot from my daughter, and part of it is that there's qualities that she has that I have, that so it's almost like looking at a mirror sometimes with things that she's doing, but there's a sense of play and naivety of sorts in a beautiful way, and I think that's what I bring to the table when I'm speaking to someone. I never assume that I know more than someone else or that there's something I need to tell them. I start with a series of questions, which is a curiosity led about who they are, what they're passionate about, and what are the things that we have in common, and build that. And it's like dating in a way. And the people that date well are the ones that are themselves from day one. Like creating a narrative for who you are never works, because you eventually get caught out because you can't hold that up for that period of time. So I think that authenticity is key to step that into the pay it forward and then to get it back a little bit. This is something that I've talked a lot about on other episodes, and I'd love to get your take, because I've seen and heard from other people, and I do it a little bit, is I find connecting two people to each other that have a mutual win-win to know each other comes back and pays you at some point in the future, if it's either directly or if it's through brand reputation and referrals. What's your take on that, as far as like your business is literally orchestrating connections? So for you, you're able to tap into your network, but ultimately the commercial side of your business is how do you help people find each other that elevates whatever they're doing?
So you can think about this a couple ways. Easiest way we talked about, trying to find that resonance. When you do that one time, it feels really good. When you do it 20 times, it feels great. When you do it 100 times, you can't keep track. And it's like a balloon with a slight leak. At some point, falls back down to the floor, and you're surprised that it sunk because it's just been so gradual to get back down there. First rules of my network, the only one I enforce, is called honoring the chain of connections. So here's what I found, right? The world works on introductions. I've had some of the most arrogant people challenge me on that. I had this one private equity guy come to me and say, well, your world is just these shishi, like you guys should like each other. Please take a call. And I pushed back to him at a family office event I was at about 2 years ago now. I was like, okay, tell me your top 5 deals. And he told me them very, very proudly. He knew them off the bat. And then I said, who introduced you to those deals? And that's when he paused. And I tell you this in the context of the fact he had not honored that chain with one of those two, who had actually the person that introduced him to deals 1, 2, and 4, because that person had made a mistake. They had not demonstrated the value they were giving him by introducing him to somebody that could result in that deal. But he had also made that mistake of being dishonorable back to his top performing introducer. So when we live in this world of a currency of introductions, you cannot lead with, here's what I get from it. But you do have to lead with, here's the value I'm giving and the time and the energy that I've put in to build this. And the question, right? Would you respect that? Would you honor it back to give me feedback? So 80% of my network, my time, is spent giving people introductions I think would benefit both of them. A lot of business happens. People haven't co-invested. They've joined boards. They've gotten major speaking opportunities. I get the gratitude from that. It does build my reputation, but I ask nothing in return, especially monetarily. But then when I come in with an example for a client and I identify this is a client, this is somebody I've engaged with to strategize, to coach, and to connect them, I ask people to opt in. I ask them to take their time. And in some cases, I can say there's a return for them as well. In most cases, they are more than happy to do it because I gave them permission to ask without any ask back to them. And by doing that systematically, I've built an entirely different network than most others, because you're in it for what you need, but you thrive in it for what you give. And that psychology of those two can work together, because when I speak about honoring the chain, I talk about how when you do that, when something has happened to you, that it makes you more successful, you have permission to be selfish and to gloat about that. But the mechanism by which you do it should be to express gratitude to those who believed in you and helped you achieve that success. And thus we can be both selfless by expressing that gratitude and selfish by sharing our success at the same time. It's possible to balance these and to have a business, to have a community where transaction occurs, but everything stays relational.
Do you have an instinct on a percentage of how many people are doing the right thing with those introductions and acknowledge how it helped them and then they give it back versus the ones who are takers? Do you have an instinct as far as what percentage would live in each lane?
In my network, it's 90% who are active. The other 10% are gone within a year. I've forcibly removed over 40 people now for being disrespectful and not honoring this. I enforce these rules because if you ask people to be the best versions of themselves and you encourage them to do it and they see the demonstration of that either by being the giver or being given to, you can elevate people. That's why, even though I love the way you described a tribal community, my co-author Noah and I call this a purposeful community because that purpose and intent can transcend what anyone's desires or wants are into just matching our needs. And when you match those needs, ask to ask, there's no imposition. That's the nature of SOAR, the startup I built. It's not just to have a better personal CRM and have an ecosystem understanding. It's this idea of what if you could build a sophisticated LLM where the AI helps you match asks by people's passions and interests, but based on the privacy of each of our networks, never showing the rest of the world who we know, but having technology suggest to us with greater efficiency. Wouldn't it be great, Andy, if you spoke to this person about one of your next companies you're going to build? Wouldn't it be great if you made an ask of me and I could turn back around and say, you know what? These are the 6 people who are ready to talk to you. We live in a world where all of this seems so hard. And in my world, it's ask with curiosity, ask for an opt-in. And the more you learn that, the more you match it, the more people honor it.
Let's go into that a little bit more. So SOAR, your startup, is very much the AI forward-facing version of what you do day to day, orchestrating connections. If you're a founder or anyone in venture, which is, from what I understand, your sweet spot, within that, what are people coming to you for on that product? How does it help fulfill their needs or the challenges that they're facing?
Let me answer that just with the qualification, which is my purposeful sweet spot is no specificity besides connector. I have people working with women in sports, in anti-human trafficking, in founders and investments, in private equity buying beauty companies. I have somebody working to revolutionize the world of music through blockchain and digital tokenization of every note you record. So I purposely left my network broad, but I'm not naive to what power means in this world. Therefore, a large amount of my network are those who have or have access to means and those with vision and purpose. And I believe by merging those together, you have great success. So yes, a great deal of my network are founders, exited founders, venture capitalists, seed investors. A lot of these people run different networks or communities. 3 friends in the network founded Princeton Angels. Another one founded Harvard Business Angels. Another one founded NYU Angels. Another one founded Brown. So they're all the conveners, the people who see the collective need. And in this, the one thing you need is you need an answer to your ask. I need to find a new CMO for my startup. We just got our Series A funding and now we need to scale. I've been doing this part-time. I need to raise a new round for my company. One of my board members of my startup, Jeff, is looking at the connection between brands and gaming. He needs the top brands on this planet, from Target and Walmart all the way down, to want to align with his purpose of gamification, community building, to increase their brand and achieve social impact. There are 1,000 of these variations. I have zero capacity to visualize, even though I'm really good at this, to visualize the chain of connections it takes to get from person A to B to C to the success for Jeff or somebody else in my network. And so the idea was, what happens if you take everyone's personal networks, which exists in our phones, exists in our head, but are fragmented between our email, our calendars, our WhatsApp, our LinkedIn, our X, our / Twitter, every variation of how we communicate. And then if I were to need to text you after this and you and I have called each other, what if I didn't save your number? And I have to go see if it's in an email. And then I have to email you, hey, what's your number? I forgot to mention this. That's the insaneness of the way technology has kept this all fragmented instead of user focused. Because all of what this is our contact book. It's our address book. And then it's Google or Yahoo or Bing or whatever variation people use to figure out how to get the person we need, and are they actually connected to the person we know? It's a very complex solve for one goal. And I'll give you like an example of a group I am championing to help them, right? I talk about injustice in this world. I think it's horrible that the majority gender on this planet has less access to everything because we live in patriarchal societies. And one of the most admirable couples I ever met, Asser Malik and his wife Malala, I'm helping them. They just launched a sports fund called Recess. I'm using my network power with no monetary gain to try to get to every single wealthy sport team owner, especially who is matriarchal or has strong women in their family. Their premise is invest in the world of women and sports tech. And if we have equal visibility for women, we may then get soon after equal access, equal pay, equal education, or opportunities for any of that in a world where we all depend on women and yet we do not empower them. And that's their ask, right? What if the tech could then make that ask go to everyone who trusts me, say to you, to then to the people that you've interviewed on this podcast to say, do you know somebody? Then all of a sudden we have that collective will with layers of trust able to solve something where somebody else on the other line is going, I'm a female sports team owner. I own three, football teams globally. I own an NFL team. I invested in women's basketball, but I can't solve this problem of men get paid this and women get paid this. And yet the US Women's World Cup team, oh my God, I love watching them. They're incredible and they should have earned way more than they did. And instead, there's controversy over global gold medal repeated champions having to scrape by in comparison to people I didn't want to watch. Like, that's an injustice. And a global human rights figure who survived and built resilience. Screw my resilience. Nothing I've ever done in my life has compared to what Malala had to go through. And she turned that into something purposeful and intentional I want to help with. What if tech could solve that quickly? And then we all align for it, then we see a result from it. And what if you were part of that and honored because you were part of that technological chain, being that type of person who helped without an expectation of return? Therefore, when you got your return, it was much greater. I believe technology can do that. I believe community can do it. I just need to think we need to look up, as I tell my kids, look at the sky, breathe this air, and realize you are not as important as you think you are, but we collectively can be. And the more we do that, the more we move from tribal to purposeful communities. We solve this because then we're accountable to each other as opposed to blaming each other for our problems.
So good. And I definitely need to jump into that. My CRM is fragmented across various places, and centralizing connections for me, which that's how I make a livelihood, not to the same level of you, but it's really important for me to be good. To finish up today, because it's very much connected. Your book is out on August 5th. The website is orchestratingconnections.com. You can get links there to purchase the book. We've covered a little bit today, but if you're a founder who's thinking about how do I build my network in a very structured way, what are the key things that people will get from your book?
Here are the 5 principles in a nutshell as we close this out. So instead of walking into a room, because as a founder, you have to go into all these rooms and all these incubators and all these places to find the right person. What if you had done the self work first to understand why you're doing this, not because it has to happen for you, but the need you're fulfilling, whatever that might be. And then what if you could pause as you walk into that room and look at the culture of that room and just study a little bit differently? The way I tell my kids to just look up at the sky when they think their problems are the greatest things on this planet, like my 8-year-old losing Super Mario Odyssey and not being able to beat a level until he realizes he can go on YouTube and look up for YouTube Kids to cheat for it and figure it out in 8 seconds. But then he goes back and he has to learn and he has to do it because you still have to do the work. So if you look at that culture and you see where the diversity in a room is, approach that diversity. If you're a male founder, go talk to female founders. If you're a white founder, go talk to black founders. If you're an Asian founder, don't stick with the same people. Go talk to somebody different than you. I guarantee you that result is a 10x most of the time. And if you embrace that diverse mindset and you have these 2 principles, numbers 2 and 3, are you curious about other people? And are you okay being vulnerable to some degree about where you are, what you're facing, what's happening in your life? you'll build a real connection. And when you take that into action of being generous to that person, diversity, culture, into curiosity and vulnerability, into generosity, what happens from that if you ask for, but you also express gratitude? None of these are hard, Andy. It's hard to keep them in our head at the same time, but the self-work we do, if we do that, it results in that one world, which is purposeful. When you seem like a peer to somebody, they'll treat you like a peer. They'll invest in you because they think you're going to go further because they see themselves in you. What if you didn't open yourselves up? What if you didn't position yourself right? What if you miss one of those key opportunities for which I think there's 5, maybe 6 for each of us in this world? What happens if you were ready and you approach this a little differently than having to succeed today or you'll fail, as opposed to building a relationship with purpose and intent so you thrive tomorrow?
Such an amazing sentiment. And it's what we bonded over. And you called it out earlier when we first met. I'm always curious. There was something quite vulnerable at a conversation, and that's why we're still talking today. And I think the ability to be able to not overthink as someone in a room and observe that. And it sounds like that the book gives a great framework for that. And I need to make sure that I get myself a copy as well, because it's something that I think that as a person in this industry who has a strong network, I'm actively always trying to grow and improve. So we never stop learning. We never should stop learning.
It's also true. And I'm grateful for your friendship and having me on this today, and hopefully being able to share some parts of wisdom without being waxing exoteric for too long.
No, it's beautiful. And I touched on it, the human side and then the practical side. I think we have to bring both of those. And in a world where AI is completely changing how people communicate, for me, people skills and having human connections is going to be one of the most important things that we bring to the table in the next few years, is the ability to be agile, be open to new things, but also build trusted relationships, because nothing can replace a one-on-one human connection.
Nothing ever has. Nothing ever will. Technology will amplify us, but it has to have something to amplify in the first place.
Yep, 100% agree. This has been so fascinating. I appreciate you making the time today, David. Thank you for joining us.
I'm grateful. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Startups Decoded. My name is Andy Walsh. We come in every week. We've got great guests coming, some big names like David, talking about real life lessons. Appreciate the support. Give us some ratings. If you're interested in sponsorship, email me hello@startupsdecoded.com. I'd love to hear from you, but look forward to seeing you next week.